What if I told you the biggest secret of our origin isn't buried in some ancient ruin, but it's actually written in our DNA? Today, we're digging into a pretty wild theory that connects a very real genetic mystery with ancient Sumerian texts. It's a story about extraterrestrial visitors, a cosmic crisis, and, believe it or not, the possible engineering of humankind itself. So, let's get into it. Okay, so it all kicks off with a genuine scientific puzzle. You see, we share a massive amount of our DNA with the great apes. We're practically cousins. But there's this one fundamental, glaring difference in our genetic blueprint that really sets us apart. So what is it? Well, here are the numbers. Chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, they all have 48 chromosomes. We humans? We have 46. And look, that's not a small thing. That's a huge piece of our evolutionary puzzle. The question is pretty obvious, right? Where did our two missing chromosomes go? Now, mainstream science has an answer, and honestly, it's pretty amazing. It turns out we didn't lose two chromosomes. Nope, something way more dramatic happened. All the evidence points to the single massive genetic event that makes us unique among all other primates. It seems that two ancestral ape chromosomes literally fused together, end to end, to create what we now call human chromosome 2. And the proof is written right into our genetic code. You see, a normal chromosome has one waist in the middle, but ours has signs of two. And it has telomeres, think of them like the little plastic tips on your shoelaces, stuck right in the middle, which is exactly where you'd expect to find them if two chromosomes were welded together. It's a genetic smoking gun. So when did this happen? Well, geneticists estimate this fusion event took place around 200,000 years ago. Now, what's really wild is that some have called this an artificial mutation, just because of how unique and specific it is. And get this, that date, 200,000 years ago, is the exact moment modern humans, Homo sapiens, suddenly appear in the fossil record. Now, I want you to remember that number, 200,000 years, because this is where the official story stops and a far, far stranger one begins. And this is the jumping-off point for the theory we're exploring today. The folks who back this idea say, hey, there's no way it's a coincidence that these ancient Sumerian tablets, we're talking records that are thousands of years old, describe a world-changing event that happened at that exact same time. And that brings us to the Anunnaki hypothesis, a truly radical explanation for our unique genetic makeup. It's an idea that says our origins might not be from this Earth at all. So who are the Anunnaki? Well, the name literally translates to those who from heaven to earth came. And according to translations of these ancient tablets, they were a super advanced race from a planet called Nibiru. So why come all the way here? Their mission was to mine Earth's gold, which they supposedly needed to create a shield of gold particles to save their own planet's failing atmosphere. But, this whole cosmic mining operation, it hit a huge snag. The beings who were tasked with all the hard labor, kind of the working class Anunnaki, they finally just had enough. And their mutiny, well, that would lead to a crisis that changed the entire fate of our planet. Okay, so imagine this. For 250,000 years, a group of Anunnaki called the Agigi were just toiling away in the mines in what we now know as South Africa. It was brutal, backbreaking work. And then, right around 200,000 years ago, and hey, there's that date again, they revolted. They surrounded the leadership, threw down their tools, and brought the entire gold operation to a dead stop. So they're facing a full-blown civil war that's threatening their entire mission. And this is when an Anunnaki leader, a chief scientist named Enki, comes up with a pretty radical solution. He says, essentially, why are we forcing our own people to do this work? Instead, he suggested they could create a brand new being by genetically modifying a creature that was already evolving right here on Earth. And this proposal, according to the theory, was our beginning. This wasn't natural evolution, it was genetic engineering. This was the moment they decided to create a species for one very specific purpose. They called this new creation the Lulu, which means the primitive worker. And the goal was really simple. Engineer a being that was intelligent enough to follow complex orders and do the hard labor, but not so advanced that it would ever become a threat to them. So, how did they do it? Well, the theory claims they performed a whole series of specific genetic tweaks. First, they fused those two chromosomes we talked about, creating our unique chromosome 2. Next, they supposedly disconnected certain parts of our DNA to limit our psychic and cognitive potential. They even say they inserted what some call a worship gene to make us predisposed to look for a higher power to guide us, which is a pretty useful trait for a species of slaves, right? And finally, they built in the ultimate control mechanism, a limited lifespan. Yeah, these limitations weren't an accident. According to this theory, they were features, not bugs. They were designed specifically to keep humanity in a permanent state of controlled, slow development. But here's the thing. There was a problem. Humanity started advancing way faster than their creators ever expected. This theory reinterprets the story of the Tower of Babel. It wasn't about building a tower to heaven. It was about humans trying to replicate Anunnaki technology. And this really alarmed the Anunnaki commander, a guy named Enlil. He saw it as a direct threat. The slaves were getting too smart. So the response, which is recorded in both the Sumerian tablets and echoed in the book of Genesis, was a divine decree. A decision was made to hard-code a limit into our very biology. And this is where we get that famous line, his years will be 120. According to the theory, this isn't some metaphor. It's a direct reference to the biological clock put inside our telomeres. And the strategy behind this? It was simple, but kind of brilliant. A shorter lifespan would just slow everything down. It breaks that chain of knowledge being passed directly from one long-lived generation to the next. By the time humans could really start to figure out their own potential, they'd be old, near death. It was the perfect way to make sure the worker race could never, ever rise up and overthrow their masters. It's a seriously wild theory, isn't it? Weaving together modern genetics with ancient mythology. But it really makes you wonder, are these just stories our ancestors told to try and explain the world around them? Or is the secret to who we are and why we're here hiding in plain sight, written not on stone tablets, but inside every single one of us in our very own DNA?